Monday morning inside Orion Tech headquarters, a world of glass and marble and money. Claire Hayes, 35 CEO, walks past cleaners without a glance. Another day, another board meeting. But one man catches her eye, the quiet janitor humming softly while wiping floors everyone steps over. That night, checking security logs, Claire sees something strange. He clocked out early to drop an envelope at an orphanage downtown. Curiosity turns to disbelief when she learns what is inside, half his monthly salary. By the time she confronts him, nothing in her perfect world will feel the same again. Claire Hayes, 35 years old, daughter of finance royalty, ran a billion-dollar artificial intelligence firm with iron discipline. Feared by employees and respected by competitors, her life running on meetings and metrics and minimal empathy, she told HR regularly that people are replaceable, results are not, and she believed this with every fiber of her being, believed that sentiment was weakness, that kindness was inefficiency, that success required ruthlessness. She had built Orion Tech from a startup to an empire in 7 years, sacrificed relationships and health and anything resembling normal life. And she was proud of this, proud of being hard, of being untouchable, of proving that women could be just as cold and calculating as any man in the boardroom. Miguel Santos, 48 years old, immigrant janitor, single father whose 2 children had grown and moved away, worked night shifts at Orion Tech cleaning floors that expensive shoes walked across without noticing. He arrived early every day, worked silently and efficiently, never complained about hours or wages or the way people looked through him like he was invisible, like he was furniture that happened to move. Staff called him the ghost with a mop because he appeared and disappeared without sound, left everything spotless, existed in a space between seen and unseen that most low-wage workers occupied, present, but not really there in the consciousness of the people who mattered. Claire had never spoken more than a nod to Miguel in the 3 years he had worked there, had never learned his name or his story, or anything about him beyond the fact that the floors were always clean and the trash was always emptied. He was part of the building's functioning, no more remarkable than the heating system or the elevators, and she would have continued in this ignorance forever if not for the storm. One night in November, a burst pipe flooded the lobby, water rushing across marble floors toward the server room where millions of dollars of equipment hummed with the company's future. And Miguel stayed, knee-deep in freezing water at midnight, moving servers to high ground, mopping and sandbagging and saving the company from catastrophic loss, while everyone else slept in their warm beds. Claire noticed next morning that everything worked flawlessly. No downtime, no data loss. No one even knew there had been danger except the facilities manager who mentioned it casually during their meeting. Miguel handled it, he said with a shrug, like this heroism was routine, like staying until 4 a.m. to save the company was just part of the job description for someone making minimum wage. Claire felt something unfamiliar, maybe shame, maybe curiosity, maybe the first crack in her armor of indifference, and she did something unprecedented. She sent a message to facilities, "Send Miguel Santos to my office." He appeared that afternoon, hands rough and calloused, uniform still slightly damp from the morning's work, standing awkwardly in her glass-walled office that probably cost more than he made in a year, looking at her with patient eyes that expected nothing, that had learned not to hope for recognition or reward. "You wanted to see me, ma'am?" he asked, his accent slight but present, marking him as other, as foreign, as less in the minds of people who judged worth by pronunciation. Claire offered him a bonus, $500, significant for him if nothing to her, but Miguel politely refused. "Thank you, ma'am, but there are others who need it more than me. Perhaps you could give it to charity." As he left, an old photograph fell from his wallet, Miguel scrambling to pick it up, but Claire had already seen it, a group of children, maybe 20 of them, smiling in front of a building with a sign that read, "St. Lucia Orphan Home," and something about that image stayed with her, haunted her through meetings and conference calls. Later that week, reviewing payroll discrepancies, Claire's assistant mentioned anomalies in Miguel's direct deposit. Half his salary going to a different account every month had been for 6 years, recipient listed as Saint Lucia Orphan Home, and Claire sat staring at that pay stub, understanding she had discovered something that did not fit her worldview, did not fit her understanding of human nature, or motivation, or the way poor people were supposed to behave. Claire's curiosity grew into obsession. She found herself thinking about Miguel during board meetings, wondering about his story, about what kind of person gives away half their income when they barely have enough to survive. And finally, she did something completely out of character. She got in her luxury car and drove to St. Lucia Orphan Home, telling herself it was about corporate social responsibility, about potentially funding a CSR project, lying to herself because admitting real curiosity about a janitor felt too vulnerable, too close to caring. The orphanage sat in a neighborhood Claire normally drove past quickly with doors locked, a modest building with peeling paint but flowers in the windows, and when she parked, her Mercedes children swarmed the car, faces pressed against glass, shouting excitedly, "It is Mr. Miguel's boss, the lady from the big building." Claire stepped out confused. How did they know her? And a small girl grabbed her hand. "Mr. Miguel shows us your picture, says you run a company where computers think, says maybe we can work there someday if we study hard." Inside the head nun, Sister Maria explained while pouring weak tea. "Miguel has kept this place alive for 6 years, pays for our electricity, our medicine, school supplies, even shoes for the children. Without him, we would have closed. The city provides almost nothing. Donations dried up years ago. But Miguel, he never misses a payment, never asks for recognition, just quietly keeps us running." Claire sat stunned, doing math in her head. Miguel made maybe $30,000 a year. After taxes, maybe 24. Giving away half meant $12,000 to the orphanage, leaving him $12,000 to live on, $1,000 a month in expensive city. How did he survive? How did he eat? How did he pay rent? Back at the office, Claire could not focus. Found herself watching Miguel on security cameras, really watching, seeing him for the first time as a person, not furniture. And what she saw broke something in her. This man arrived first every morning at 5 a.m., left last at 8 p.m., 15-hour days, ate instant noodles alone in the janitor's room reading library books, mended his own uniform, walked to work because bus fare added up, lived with such discipline and sacrifice that her own lifestyle felt obscene by comparison. And she realized she knew nothing about poverty, nothing about generosity, nothing about what actually mattered. She invited him for coffee. Miguel refused politely. "Ma'am, people talk. I would rather not create problems for you." But Claire insisted. Something in her needed to understand, needed to know his story. And they sat in a cheap diner where she felt conspicuous in her designer suit, while Miguel looked comfortable and at ease. "Why give so much when you have so little?" she asked directly. No corporate language, no polite dancing around the question. Miguel smiled, the first real smile she had seen from him. "Because I once was one of them," he said quietly. "I grew up in that orphanage, slept in the same beds, ate from the same donated food. I know what it feels like to be forgotten, to be nobody's priority, and someone paid for my scholarship, someone I never met, someone who did not need recognition or thanks, just paid it forward, and now it is my turn." He told her about growing up parentless, about the scholarship that got him to community college, about his wife who died young, leaving him with 2 kids to raise on survival wages, about finding peace not in accumulating but in giving, about how every dollar he donated felt like freedom, not sacrifice, because it meant those children would not grow up as forgotten as he had been. Claire listened with tears she did not understand. This was not sad, this was beautiful. But something in her was breaking, some wall she had built around her heart to survive in cutthroat business. And she realized her father had built orphanages too, built them for tax breaks and photo opportunities, built them with his name on plaques and his company's logo everywhere, built them as investments, not acts of love. And she had learned from him that generosity was strategy, not compassion. That night, Claire could not sign the purchase order for her new luxury car, found herself staring at the price, $60,000. Miguel's salary for 2 years, enough to run the orphanage for 5 years, and she canceled the order, donated anonymously to St. Lucia Home instead, and felt something she had not felt in years. She felt useful. She felt human. The photograph of orphans that had fallen from Miguel's wallet now sat on her desk beside her gold pen. This reminder that worth was not measured in quarterly reports. That impact was not always visible on balance sheets. Board members noticed her changes, her softness they called it, mocked her for showing emotion, for seeming distracted, for questioning profit, maximizing decisions that hurt workers. One board member said dismissively, "We are a tech company, not a charity. If you want to save the world, maybe you're in the wrong industry." Claire looked at him, really looked, saw the emptiness behind expensive suits and stock options, and replied quietly, "Maybe that is the problem. Maybe we should be both. Maybe companies that only care about profit are why the world needs so much saving." Miguel left an apple on her desk one morning, just an apple with a note, for someone who looked hungry, and Claire held that apple like it was precious, like it was worth more than all her stock options, because it was given from nothing by someone who had nothing, given with care by someone who had noticed she skipped lunch during stressful days, and she understood that she had been starving her whole life, not for food, but for connection, for meaning, for the kind of richness that had nothing to do with money. The crisis came from an unexpected direction, corporate audit flagging irregular expenses in Claire's accounts, large donations to an orphanage with no clear business justification, and suddenly there were questions, investigations, whispered accusations in boardrooms and break rooms. Anonymous emails started circulating claiming Miguel was bribing the CEO for favors, for better pay, for special treatment. The emails were vicious and detailed, described meetings between CEO and janitor, suggested inappropriate relationship, turned generosity into scandal because people could not imagine kindness without ulterior motive, could not believe a CEO would care about a janitor without some corrupt reason. HR suspended Miguel pending investigation, would not listen to his protest, to Claire's explanations, just followed protocol, which meant assuming guilt until proven innocent, which meant a poor immigrant was guilty by default while the wealthy CEO was given benefit of doubt. And the injustice of it, the casual cruelty, made Claire understand how the system was designed to protect people like her while destroying people like Miguel. He accepted the suspension quietly, more worried about the orphans losing support than his job, more concerned about the children than his reputation, and that selflessness in the face of persecution made Claire realize she had to fight, had to risk everything because staying silent meant being complicit in injustice. She stormed into the boardroom, interrupted their meeting, demanded they listen. "Miguel Santos is innocent," she said, her voice shaking with rage and fear and determination. "I made those donations. I made them because I learned what actual leadership looks like from watching a janitor give away half his salary. I made them because I realized everything I thought I knew about success and worth was backwards. And if you cannot understand that, then this company deserves to fail." The chairman, 60 years old and convinced of his own importance, sneered at her. "You would risk the company for a janitor?" he asked, the word janitor dripping with contempt. Claire met his eyes without flinching. "No," she said clearly. "I would risk it for decency, for proving that profit is not the only thing that matters, for showing that people are more than their paychecks." The media caught the scandal, tabloids and business journals both. Headlines screaming CEO defends janitor in donation probe. Speculation about everything from embezzlement to romance. Photos of Claire and Miguel leaving the building on different days juxtaposed to suggest connection. The story had everything media loved: class divide, corporate corruption, possible scandal, and they chewed it up and spit it out twisted beyond recognition. Miguel disappeared after the third day of coverage, would not answer his phone, would not come to the meetings Claire tried to arrange, just vanished, and she understood he was trying to protect her, trying to absorb the damage himself, sacrificing again because that was what he always did. Claire drove through pouring rain to St. Lucia Home. found Miguel there repainting walls, covered in paint splatters, children running around him laughing. And the scene was so pure, so genuinely good that she wanted to cry. "You should not be here," he said when he saw her. "Neither should you," she answered. They sat on the front steps while rain poured, while children played inside, while their worlds hung in balance, and Miguel confessed what she already suspected. They threatened to investigate the orphanage, to audit their books, to shut them down if I did not leave quietly. And I cannot let that happen. These children need this place, need Sister Maria, need the stability and safety, so I leave. I find another job. I keep sending money somehow, but you go back, you save the company. You do not throw away everything for me." Claire felt something harden in her chest, not coldness but resolve, not ice but steel. And she made a decision that would change everything. Next morning, she called a press conference. Reporters packed into the lobby of Orion Tech. Cameras everywhere, shareholders panicking, board members furious, and she stood at the podium in a simple dress, not a power suit, no armor, just herself. And she spoke truth without calculation. "If generosity is a crime, then I am guilty," she said, her voice carrying across the room. "I have spent 7 years building this company on efficiency and profit, treating people as resources, believing that ruthlessness was strength, and I was wrong, fundamentally wrong. And it took a janitor who gives away half his paycheck to teach me what leadership actually means." She announced her resignation as CEO, effective immediately, transferred $20 million of her personal wealth to establish the Lucia Fund, a foundation dedicated to supporting orphanages and providing education scholarships, managed jointly by former employees and community leaders, built on principles of transparency and service, not recognition. The room erupted, journalists shouting questions, cameras flashing, board members demanding she reconsider. But Claire felt lighter than she had felt in years, felt free from the weight of pretending that accumulation was the same as success, that power was the same as impact. Miguel tried to protest, showed up at her apartment that evening. "You do not have to do this," he said desperately. "You work so hard, built so much, you cannot throw it away for me. For children you barely know, it is too much." Claire smiled, genuine and warm. "Maybe I finally have to do this," she said. Maybe this is the first real thing I've done in years. Maybe choosing people over profit is not throwing away success, but finally achieving it. You taught me that without trying, just by being yourself, just by living your values. And I am done pretending that quarterly earnings matter more than human dignity." She held up Miguel's janitor keyring, this symbol of his access to places most people never noticed. Bathrooms and supply closets and service hallways, the hidden infrastructure of privilege. And she said to the cameras, "These keys open more doors than all our mergers, because they belong to someone who understood that service is not beneath anyone, that cleaning floors matters as much as closing deals, that the person scrubbing toilets has as much value as the person in the corner office." The moment went viral, shared millions of times. The CEO who followed the janitor's heart, trending worldwide, and suddenly the story shifted from scandal to inspiration, from corruption to redemption. 6 months after her resignation, Claire worked as a volunteer teacher at St. Lucia Home, traded her designer suits for jeans and rolled-up sleeves, taught coding and computer skills to teenagers who had never imagined they could work in tech, and she was happier than she had ever been in corporate boardrooms. Found more meaning in one child understanding an algorithm than in closing million-dollar deals. Miguel ran operations for the Lucia Fund, coordinated donations and expansion, brought the same humble efficiency to running a foundation that he had brought to mopping floors, and together they built something neither could have created alone. Their bond deepened, not romance at first, but something more fundamental, shared purpose, mutual respect, recognition that they completed each other's understanding of the world. Miguel teaching Claire about sacrifice and service, Claire teaching Miguel that his story mattered, that his voice deserved to be heard, that someone who had been invisible his whole life should stand in the spotlight. They opened satellite orphanages across 3 cities, funded by Claire's wealth but designed by Miguel's wisdom, by his understanding of what children actually needed. Not luxury, but stability. Not charity, but investment. Not pity, but genuine opportunity. One evening after a long day of renovating one of the new facilities, Claire told Miguel what she had been feeling, what she needed him to understand. "You taught me that profit was never the point," she said. "That all my success was worthless if I was not using it to make the world gentler. That wealth without generosity is just hoarding. That the person with millions in the bank who dies alone has failed more completely than the person who dies broke but beloved." Miguel laughed, that gentle sound she had come to treasure. "And you taught me that rich folks can change too," he said. "That walls can come down. That people who seem cold are often just scared. That everyone deserves a chance to become better than they were." A journalist asked Claire during an interview what she missed about corporate life, the power and prestige and luxury that used to define her. And her answer surprised even herself. "Nothing I cannot build here," she said. The office had money, but this place has meaning. The boardroom had decisions, but this place has impact. I traded a corner office for a classroom and gained everything that actually matters. Traded shareholders for children and found the only investment that truly pays dividends, which is investing in human potential. The photograph that had fallen from Miguel's wallet, that image of orphans that started everything, now hung framed on the wall of the Lucha Fund headquarters. Beside it, newer photos of the same children thriving, graduating, becoming nurses and teachers and social workers. Living proof that investment in forgotten people created returns no stock market could match. The blue paper flower from another story sat beside these photos. Gifts from children, symbols of hope and transformation, reminders that small gestures from people with nothing often mattered more than grand gestures from people with everything. An investor approached Claire with an offer: buy back her company if she abandoned the charity work, return to corporate life, rebuild her empire. The offer was generous, tempting. Everything she had walked away from offered back with apologies, but Claire declined without hesitation. "I already own something worth more," she said. "I own purpose, I own connection, I own the knowledge that I am building something that will outlive me, that will matter when quarterly reports are forgotten, and that is wealth your money cannot buy." Evening scene at St. Lucia home, children performing a song Miguel had written. Lyrics simple but profound. We all have enough to share when we choose love over fear. And watching these children who had nothing sing about sharing made Claire understand that generosity was not about how much you had, but about willingness to give. That Miguel, with his instant noodles and his $12,000 salary, was wealthier than she had ever been with millions, because wealth was not what you kept, but what you gave, not what you hoarded, but what you shared, not the size of your bank account, but the size of your heart. Tears shone in Claire's eyes as children sang, as Miguel conducted with his paint-stained hands, as Sister Maria smiled from the doorway. And she understood that this moment, this simple moment of children singing in a modest building, this mattered more than every board meeting she had ever run, every deal she had ever closed, every award she had ever won. This was success, this was impact, this was the life she had been too blind to see, while chasing metrics and money and meaningless measures of worth that left her empty and alone. 1 year after Claire's resignation, the Lucia Fund hosted a global conference on ethical business, corporate leaders gathering not to discuss profit maximization but human impact, not to celebrate extraction but contribution, and the shift in conversation from shareholders to stakeholders, from earnings to ethics, represented everything Claire and Miguel had fought to change. Former rivals now sponsored orphan scholarships. Competitors who had mocked Claire's resignation now called her a visionary. Business schools developed case studies about her transformation. And the janitor who started it all stood backstage nervous and uncertain. Claire introduced Miguel on stage, this man who had been invisible 3 years ago, now standing before hundreds of corporate leaders, and she spoke with such love and respect that Miguel's hands shook. "My first teacher in leadership," she called him. "The person who taught me that success is not about climbing ladders but lifting others, not about accumulating wealth, but distributing opportunity, Not about being powerful, but being useful. Miguel stepped forward, wiping his hands on his uniform, the same janitor uniform he still wore by choice, though he could afford better. Wore it as a reminder of where he came from, of what mattered. "I never finished school," Miguel said, his voice quiet but carrying. "Never had fancy degrees or business training, but I learned one thing from growing up with nothing. I learned that rich or poor, we all need the same things. We need to be seen, to be valued, to be loved, and giving those things away. That is how we get home. That is how we find peace, not by accumulating, but by sharing, not by climbing, but by lifting." The hall erupted in applause, 2,000 hands clapping for a janitor, for someone society said was worthless, teaching corporate leaders what actually mattered, and the sound was deafening, overwhelming, proof that transformation was possible. Afterward, children from all 3 orphanages ran up, placing paper hearts in Claire and Miguel's hands, each heart inscribed with a message: "Thank you for staying. You are my family. I will pay it forward." And these simple papers represented the true measure of their success. Not stock prices or quarterly earnings, but lives changed, futures opened, hope distributed to children who had every reason to give up, but chose instead to dream. Claire whispered to Miguel, "You changed the world quietly, one envelope at a time, one sacrifice at a time." Miguel shook his head gently. "No," he said. "We just listened to it cry, heard the voices everyone else ignored, and we showed up. That is all. We just showed up consistently." Final montage showing their work. New dormitory being built. Claire teaching coding to teenagers. Miguel fixing lights and plumbing. Children laughing under banners reading "Everyone deserves a home." And these images told the story better than words could. Showed that transformation was not dramatic gesture, but daily choice. Not one big sacrifice, but thousands small commitments. Not perfection, but presence. The work was hard, would always be hard. Poverty did not disappear because 2 people cared. Systems did not change because one CEO resigned, but they had proven something important, proven that individuals could make a difference, that choosing people over profit was possible, that generosity could be more than strategy. Closing image at sunset, Miguel locking the orphanage door for the night. Routine he had done 1,000 times. But tonight different. Tonight Claire stood beside him, and when he finished, he handed her the keys, this symbol of his service, his sacrifice, his secret life of generosity. She hung them next to the frame photograph, 2 symbols side by side, the keys that opened doors to places most people never saw, and the photo that showed children who were nobody's priority until someone made them everything. And together these objects told the story complete. Reminded everyone who saw them that the greatest leaders often sweep floors before they move mountains. That impact begins, not in boardrooms, but in choosing to see, to care, to stay when everyone else walks away. If you believe that healing stories like this deserve to be told, leave a comment and subscribe to HA Stories. We tell stories that should not be forgotten.